Hello, I'm Regina McCann-Hess and president of Forge Wealth Management. Welcome to our Women in Wealth series. Today, we're going to talk about college student loans. And the reason we're going to talk about that today is the student loan repayment has opened back up for many, many people who have student debt. So I thought it'd be a great idea to talk about ways to get ahead of your student debt. If you hadn't already, when the payments were ceased, one of the things you could have done was to continue making payments because they weren't accumulating interest. But now that that opportunity has ended, we want to look at some other options for you. So when college ends, you're obviously left with a diploma and a sense of accomplishment, but you're also probably left with some serious hefty debt and, of course, some anxiety that goes along with that. And the average member of the class of 2020 has more than $37,693,000 in student debt. And collectively, all student debt holders in the US carry about 1.7 trillion in student loans. So it's a lot of money. And I know there's kids out there who have less than that 37,000 number. And I know kids out there who have a lot more than that $37,000 amount in student debt. So there's whatever we can do to help is a great idea. And because student debt is a heavy burden, to say the least. And if your debt is a constant source of stress, you're not alone. There's more than 45 million others who are shouldering a piece of this trillion-dollar plus load. And if you're saddled by this kind of debt, chances are it's affecting more than just your wallet. One survey of student loan borrowers reported that 9 in 10 have experienced anxiety due to their debt burdens. Others have admitted to experiencing depression, burnout, and feeling stuck in a job they don't love because of their student debt obligations. Now, financial anxiety is common. Money is actually a primary stressor for about 51% of Americans, and it can be a significant roadblock for physical health and emotional well-being. So in this type of anxious state, it's easy to lose motivation. How do you keep going when you feel so stuck? Managing student debt is hard work, but it is possible. So there are a number of steps you can take to make a dent and eventually overcome your student debt. Step number 1, get organized. It's easier said than done, but the first steps to overcoming a pile, a hill, or a mountain of student debt is to try to remain calm. Stressing and losing sleep are normal responses, but will not help you diminish your debt any faster. First things first, take stock of what loans you actually have. Make a list of your loans, classify them as private or federal, and note the dollar amounts and the interest rates of each. It's very important to note the interest rates of each because they're going to vary. Federal loans have a fixed interest rate that tend to be lower than the private loans. Now, in some cases, significantly lower. So payments aren't actually due until after graduation, and there may be, a grace period or so. For example, for federal subsidized or unsubsidized Stafford loans, there's a 6-month grace period, while it's 9 months for federal Perkins loans. Now, while federal student loans are generally the most attractive because their interest rates are so low, plenty of debt-bearing graduates did not qualify for them when applying for college. In this case, you may have opted for private loans from banks, credit unions, state-affiliated organizations, or a combination of any of these. Or perhaps you have a mix of federal and private loans. The interest rates for private loans vary from one institution to the next, as do the terms. So they also have varying grace periods depending on the lender. So regardless of which type of loans you have, you can't fight your debt if you don't know how much of it you have or how paying it back works. So take some time to create an organized, comprehensive list of loans, lenders, and interest rates. And that's certainly going to be a good start. So now let's look at step number 2, prioritize your spending. Next, basically establish your priorities. You need to pay down your debt, but not at the expense of everything else. It's best to have some money socked away for a rainy day. An emergency fund of 2 or 3 months worth of living expenses can help provide a safety net and peace of mind, even if you still have significant student debt. You want to create a budget so that you can start building up some savings, and make sure you leave a little bit of room for some fun. You don't want your debt to rule your life. Now, it's also prudent to contribute even a small amount to your retirement savings if possible. And if your company has a 401k with a company match, consider putting away at least enough to take advantage of the matching policy. And it's one of my favorite sayings, that's essentially free money. And through, you got to take advantage of that. So through that, with the power of compounding interest, investing early could have a very meaningful impact later. Now, once you've ascertained how much debt you've amassed and prioritize your spending, there's a further steps that you can take to work toward a student debt-free life. And that's going to take us to step number 3, accelerate your payments, of course, if possible. The most straightforward way to pay off your loans faster is to pay more than is due. Even contributing a small amount of the principal additionally each month can add up to big savings in the long run. Now, if you're only paying the minimum, you may not feel like you're making much progress despite consistent payments, which can be really frustrating and disheartening. However, if you're struggling to maintain an emergency fund or make ends meet as it is, this may not be the most practical option for you. If you can't afford to put a few extra dollars towards your payments each month on a regular basis, contributing a nice little chunk of cash if you come into any sort of windfall, such as a raise, a bonus, a return security deposit, an inheritance, or even some extra cash from a side job. One of my favorite rules is, 1/3 rule. When you get a raise or a bonus, 1/3 goes towards your rainy day savings, which in this case could be your emergency fund or your student debt. 1/3 goes towards your retirement savings, and 1/3 goes towards, just kind of living, pat yourself on the back, and be able to, enjoy the fruits of your labor a little bit. Now, if those things aren't happening, maybe that comes from an extra side job that is just targeted to help you with your student loan debt and build that rainy day savings. So side gigs aren't the only work that you can help tackle your student debt either. Some professions offer federal student loan forgiveness. Now, certain public service jobs or some teaching roles at public schools, for example, may help you pay off some federal student debt after some time of service. Now, these types of arrangements typically come with specific stipulations. So if you're taking a role that qualifies your student loan forgiveness, your federal student loan forgiveness, I should say, make sure you're comfortable with the commitment required to reap the benefits. Private employers may now be able to help with student debt too. Now, the IRS recently issued a ruling that may allow plan sponsors of employee retirement funds to match employee contributions to a 401k plans based on employees' student debt. So if your company could contribute to your 401k at the same amount you're paying towards your monthly student loans, of course, up to a certain limit, it's a novel concept that's just beginning to take off, but it may be a benefit to look out for when you're searching for your next job. Now, I will tell you, this is a brand new, as in like a year old or so, maybe a little bit more than a year old, but it is very new to employers. So it is, it might be something that not every employer has, but it's definitely worth asking the question whether or not they have that benefit. And I think as we go forward, more and more companies will offer that benefit as they learn about it as well. Now let's talk about step number 4, consider consolidating your loans. Now, if you've got student loans, the word consolidate is going to come up. So will the word refinance. But what's the difference? Consolidating loan typically refers to federal student loans. It's the process of combining multiple federal student loans into one by extending the term. Now, you only get one monthly bill, and while your monthly dollar amount may decrease because you've extended the term, the interest rate will not decrease. Consolidating federal student loans does not take into account your credit history. It's free, though, through the Department of Education and can be done online. So steer clear of any service providers that offer to consolidate your federal student loans for a fee. When you consolidate your federal loans, you'll get a new term for the loan, which will range from 10 to 30 years. You'll still have a fixed interest rate, but your new interest rate will be a weighted average of your current interest rates of your federal loans. Consolidating federal student loans may be the right choice for you if you are required to consolidate your loans to be eligible for certain profession-based loan repayment programs. You do not need a significantly lower interest rate, but would like to make lower monthly payments. And then consolidating federal student loans may not be the right choice for you if you have mostly or entirely private loans, or you need a significantly lower interest rate environment. But just remember here in this option here, number 4, if you're extending your loan payments, that could come later. It could come into play when you're applying for a mortgage because they're looking at your debt to income ratio. So be very well aware of that before you make that choice. Let's talk about step number 5. Consider refinancing your loans. Now, refinancing your loans, also known as your private student loan consolidation, generally refers to the process by which a private lender, like a bank, a credit union, those types of things, combines multiple private loans into just one loan. If you have a mix of federal and private loans, it's possible to have them all federally included, refinanced into one. Refinancing loans does not impact loan repayment for public service work, teaching jobs, and the like, but can be beneficial. So the terms of refinancing vary from lender to lender, but in general, lenders lower your interest rate to save money in the long run. So take note, though, that the interest rates after refinancing may vary based on your income, your credit, and of course, the lender. Now, private lenders who offer refinancing will take into consideration your credit score, your education, your job history to provide you and your loans with a new interest rate. Like consolidated loans, refinance loans are paid in a single monthly payment, so not all the separate loan payments that you may have been making up until that time. And refinancing your loans might be right for you if you have good credit, you have a well-paying job, you have a cosigner that has good credit and or a well-paying job. Refinancing your loans may not be the right decision for you if you have poor credit, lack stable income, don't have access to a cosigner who meets either one of those criteria. And with refinancing private loans especially, it's critically important that you do your due diligence because each financial institution or program offers different rates and refinancing options. Before you commit to one, be sure to do your research to make sure that you're getting the best rate for you to get ahead. Now, just to conclude, student debt is overwhelming. I know it's a big concern for a lot of people out there, and it may be easier to shelve it in your mind than to think about it and spiral into anxious despair. But debt-induced stress can be quite literally make you unwell. So you don't want to panic. You want to find a repayment plan that works for you. It may take time and effort to evaluate your loans, your financial needs, and your options. And if you're willing to put in the work, even the biggest mountain of student debt can be conquered. So I'm going to say that your call to action today is really just organize your loans, make a list of them and figure out what you have first, and then determine, does it make sense to refinance or consolidate your loans? The answer might be yes, but it also may be no, and that's okay. But it also brings you closer to understanding what you have and what you can do about it and how you should approach it going forward. And with that, I want to thank you for joining me. Again, I'm Regina McCann-Hess, president of Forge Wealth Management. Our website is forgewealth.com. You can follow me on Facebook and YouTube at Forge Wealth. Insta at Forge Wealth Management, and LinkedIn is Regina McCann Hess. Thank you. Have a great day.